Hey everybody. Just waiting for everything to connect. Need a moment. Hope everyone's doing well today. Today's Thursday, right? Need a moment. Sorry. Again, I have to check the sound. It's just I've watched enough streams and the sound goes out or the screen goes black. I'm not sure what causes some of these things, but it's just like these horror stories and you just don't want it to happen to you. So hello everybody, Monica Guzman, streaming live, talking about these 2 weeks, the cultural differences between American baseball and MLB, and at the same time I've been trying to make the cultural differences, right, between just America mid 1800s through the early 1900s and 2021. And I noticed the cultural differences as soon as, even during Barack Obama's campaign, the first time around for president of the United States. And I feel like, so you had the civil rights movement of the 1960s, right? And I feel like for those people who lived it, Barack Obama was the culmination of all their work during that time. And for some of them, it was like they lived to see the fruits of their labor. And that's kind of how I feel at this point. It's like, well, some of us get to live to see the fruits of our labor. We all know that those of us on the right do this stuff for free. We don't have sponsors. I mean, sponsors to the point that the left has. I know some of you guys, like Lauren Southern for a while, had some VPN sponsor, and I know Ramsey Paul has a sponsor, but it's different when it's small businesses, right? It's very different when it's corporations, when it's the government sponsoring you, stuff like that. It's different when it's a lot of individuals pulling in the same direction as opposed to organizations being forced in the same direction, right? Like unions. Unions end up pulling in the same direction because majority rules, right? And so it's a different scenario for us on the right. We're doing this on our own time. We're doing this while we're balancing everything else. And so I'm hoping that we get to see the fruits of our labor. That's why it's so important to find out where you are health-wise. If you have, like, again, the three common ones, the three treatable ones: diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, they're all treatable. Usually the way you get rid of that is by losing weight. Again, as a mom, I have had 2 experiences with weight. And the first time around, I thought that I had like carpal tunnel syndrome. And this is when my kid was 18 months old. And I went to the doctor and he's like, nah, you just have to lose weight. And I lost the weight, and the carpal tunnel syndrome symptoms that I thought I was experiencing, what I imagined was the extra weight was causing pressure on the veins, right? Like the veins. And so sure enough, I lost the weight. And it was, anyways, I was very lucky at that time. I was making very good money. And that's when I had enough time that's when we were going to the gym. We went to the gym for about 1.5 years. And at that time, I could afford the membership for myself and my kid. My kid was in their daycare. And it was great. It was a really great experience for both of us. And I had the time. Yes, a lot of it was the income that allowed me to do that. A lot of things fell into place for me. But I think when you're on the right path, that's what it's like, right? Things just fall into place. And so those of you working on the right, you need to get your blood panels done. There's this really interesting thing happening right now. And again, I know a lot of what I know, a lot of the knowledge that I've gained over the last decade is because I write. So when I write, I have the opportunity to research these topics that I would never read about on my own time. And so something that's interesting that's happening in the healthcare industry is the same way social media tech is automating our lives for us. It's happening in the healthcare industry too, which there's so many sides to the coin. This coin has several sides. So we know that there's a lot of sick people in America. And I personally care more about Americans who are sick as opposed to Haitians or Afghanis bringing their diseases with them. I don't. My heart is not that big. My heart is not that big. So Americans are sick. And we do know that rural America is just opioid epidemic, right? So, okay, so I don't want to get too far into that right now, but they're automating healthcare. They're using algorithms to automate healthcare. Basically, they take down your symptoms and they say, this is the best treatment plan for this person based on their symptoms, based on the length of their addiction, based on the severity of the addiction, like what's your substance of choice. And so something good that has actually come out of it is the baseline appointment, where a doctor runs a lot of blood tests to figure out, well, what is your health status right now? Are you diabetic? Do you have high cholesterol? Do you have high blood pressure? Because these are the three that are the most treatable by simply losing weight. So if you're on the right, Scott Pressler tweeted about this probably a month ago. He is obviously on the go. I don't think he goes home often. He's always on the road right now, right? And he's doing amazing things for America. And I guess he was anemic. So he got his B12 tested and he got it treated. So he's good. I imagine Scott Pressler's not someone that wants to pack on the pounds, so he still looks thin. But I trust me, I've dealt with my weight twice in my life, obviously post childbirth. And every time I get back down, or both times that I've gotten back down to my normal weight, I think to myself, why would anyone want to be fat? Like, visually, it's just so unappealing. Like, there's this retail commercial right now with body equality, and it shows a lot of fat women. It's like, one of these days they're going to regret that. One of these days they're going to regret that they ballooned up that much. And if they don't, their health will make them regret it. So the people dying right now, they don't show you the images, but when you hear of unvaccinated people dying right now, they're always fat. Or when the pandemic first started, I can tell you that a family member freaked out when we heard about some 30-year-old die. And again, this is in the beginning. Well, he was fat and asthmatic. And so I understand if you're asthmatic, if you worry. Basically, if you have breathing issues, there's another phrase for it. But if you have breathing issues, pulmonary issues, again, asthmatic, bronchioles, stuff like that, I do understand why you're worried for your health. You have a deficiency that this virus attacks. So rightfully you should be worried. But I mean, you basically double down if you're fat. Again, I don't get it. That's got to be some sort of mental illness. Okay, so if you're on the right and if you want to see the fruits of your labor, the way the civil rights people are seeing their fruits of their labor right now, you've got to get healthy, especially if it's something like treatable, like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. You can control that with just your weight, by losing weight, getting healthy. Okay, so the last 2 weeks, I've been talking about the cultural differences between American baseball and MLB, and these are the same cultural differences that have occurred to the country. So as you see mediocrity being celebrated in 2021, mediocrity is also celebrated in MLB in 2021. So here you have Professional Baseball Hall of Fame first 5 title totals. The first Hall of Fame class set the standard. And unfortunately, Ty Cobb never became a champion, and that's just such a freaking tragedy. I do. I think it's tragic that a player that great just never became a champion. And I'm sure nobody felt the pang of that more than Ty Cobb. But Ty Cobb was, batting average 366, it's still the best. It's going to be the best forever, right? RBI titles, stolen base titles, batting titles, Triple Crown. And then you've got Walter Johnson, who was outstanding, Christy Mathewson, obviously Babe Ruth, and Honus Wagner. So this is the standard for the Hall of Fame. And so I want to skip over to the cross-check test. So I've seen, before I started researching, I took a look. Larry Walker is a Hall of Famer according to the MLB Marxist. Derek Jeter is a Hall of Famer according to the MLB Marxist. So this chart right here, which I call the cross-check test, is a culmination of me saying, okay, what makes a Hall of Famer, right? And one of the things I looked at was, if you're a champion, are you a Hall of Famer? And the answer is no. And the answer is no because Frank Crosetti and Tommy Henrich, Hank Bauer are a result of platooning. Now, I do know that Ty Cobb's buddy, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, so they both became managers, right? And the other guy became a manager at some point. I can't remember if it was pre or during his playing career or after his career. But he's kind of the one that started testing the platoon idea. But it didn't come off as being as severe as platooning was under Andrew Friedman not that long ago. And let's face it, what was Andrew Friedman really doing with platooning? He was turning over the team, right? There were guys he was trying to get rid of, basically, right? As he was bringing in his fungible bots, baseball bots, right? He was getting rid of some of the baseball players. He was trying to turn over the table. He was bidding his time, trying to get Mookie Betts and Joe Kelly. He was basically keeping the LA fan that was on his side complacent until he turned the team into what he actually wanted, as opposed to the team that he inherited from Ned Colletti. Personally, I would have loved to have seen what Ned Colletti could have continued to do, given that he had Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager, obviously Kershaw before the back injuries. Zach Greinke was post Ned Colletti, right? No. He couldn't get Zach Greinke. I believe he made an attempt to get Zach Greinke, but somehow Zach Greinke wasn't available. But I believe he also had his eye on Chris Taylor. So a couple guys that were on his radar, but he couldn't quite get. So Andrew Friedman inherited a lot from Ned Colletti. But Friedman had his eye on your Mookie Betts, Joe Kelly. Who else is he super, super into? A couple of other guys, right? Obviously not baseball players. Just a bunch of bots. So this is a culmination of me asking several questions. This is a culmination of me putting a lot of things together. Like you could see that I looked at titles, I looked at top 20, and then finally I looked at, did they get into the Hall of Fame, and how did they get into the Hall of Fame? So Lou Gehrig got in on a special election because he died. If he had been up against the rest of the potentials, what ballot would he have gotten in on is a question that will forever remain in our minds, or at least I am bringing it up so that it will be forever on your mind. Kind of like that reasonable doubt, right? I'm giving you something to give you doubt. And this is given that Joe DiMaggio got in on the third ballot. Yogi Berra got in on the second ballot. And then obviously, I mean, I'm not here to advocate for Herb Pennock, but he got in on the 8th. And then Bill Dickey got in on the 7th. So I'm going to show you today some raw data. You can get in on my process. Oh, geez. Yeah. Raw data. So this is me. I went through the Baseball Hall of Fame website and I pulled off all the names from it. And so some of these guys, obviously in gold, where they belong is the American Baseball Hall of Fame first 5 class, the first class that was inducted. And I was like, okay, obviously class of their own. Let me put them in gold and let me separate them. And then in these highlighted peach tone are your guys that were inducted through Veterans Committee. And then you see here in 1945, there is a very good chunk of inductees. And I guess this is partly because of World War II. They said, you know what, let's just get in all these guys. And, you know, looking at the names, I mean, King Kelly, even for me, with all the research that I've done, a lot of these are still like, okay, I still need to dig deeper into these. But obviously King Kelly, because of his relationship with A.G. Spalding. But I mean, Jimmy Collins, because I mean, I know Cap Anson the most, and he got in pretty quickly. Rube Waddell is one of them. So I still have a long way to go. I still have a lot of learning to do, a lot of research to do. But I imagine that the Veterans Committee in 1945 made the right choice in getting in guys who merited a position, a place in Babe Ruth's Hall. Because they, in their own way, brought something to American baseball. And there's a big difference. Like, I get that because MLB is run differently than American baseball was run. It's a cultural difference. We all know that the Jews have a relationship with the Africans. So I personally have no idea why you would induct the Negro League players into the American Baseball Hall of Fame, except the fact that it's cultural. And the people running MLB have a bias against whites toward Africans. So what I did here is I'm showing you up into Jackie Robinson. So Jackie Robinson was inducted in 1962, and to the credit of that group of writers who voted, he got in with 77.57% of the vote, I believe. And so, okay, so Jackie Robinson wasn't anything unanimous. He barely got in. Pardon. Sorry about that. And so, you know, I give them credit for not busting a Derek Jeter, which is ridiculous. They were fair about it. You know, I stand with the guys who didn't feel like he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, sorry, it's just cultural differences, right? And I know this is really, really tiny, but what I also did was I said, okay, what ballot did they get in on? And there's some that are pushing it, right? 17th ballot, 12th ballot. I know there was a 17th ballot in here. There was 14th ballot, 12th ballot, 16th ballot, Dizzy Vance. So I get it, you know, but again, integration occurred 1947. So if they were looking into the future and they realized that, you know what, stuff is shifting, the white player is going to lose support because there's so much support for the African player, then they probably said to themselves, let's get our players in. And which is right, because this is American baseball. The Negro League integrated into American baseball. I could not make these arguments if American baseball had integrated into the Negro League. Totally different story, right? But that's not the way it went. The Negro League integrated into American baseball. Therefore, they didn't contribute anything. They didn't contribute to the good times that American baseball experienced. And obviously, they didn't provide solutions to help the professional sport continue on during the 1 year Spanish War, right? Where a little bit of funding dried up for them, or they weren't there during World War One. They weren't there to help the sport come back from the White Sox, Black Sox 1919 scandal. They weren't there when A.G. Spalding was getting rid of gambling, drinking within the sport. They weren't there for any of that. So I have no idea. That's why I will not integrate any Negro League statistics into my stuff. Sorry, they don't get to live in the same hall as Babe Ruth. They did not do Babe Ruth things. They weren't there to provide solutions for the sport when the sport was going through its ups and downs. They're not even there right now that MLB is in the gutter. The guys that they recruit don't provide any value. They don't bring in ratings. The one that I feel really could have done something for MLB is Springer. I don't talk about George Springer anymore. I still have a lot of I'm not actively supporting him, so I can't say that I have a lot of support for him. But George Springer, what holds him back are all the injuries, right? He has a lot of what you want in a baseball player, an American baseball player. He's tall. He is athletically blessed. I understand he has his speech thing, but when he overcomes it, he's well spoken. He's obviously intelligent. He's good looking. We gotta be honest, right? He's good looking. But the fact that he's in Canada now or playing for the Canadian team, and then the injuries for sure. But George Springer could have done a lot for MLB, but I don't think George Springer's the right African for MLB. They want Judge, they want Stanton, they want Mookie Betts, they want a lot of other Africans that I can't even think of them off the top of my head, right? Curtis Granderson, please. I think it's George Springer. George Springer could have been good for MLB. And on the Springer line, I still have a lot of, again, I can't say support, but obviously Nolan Arenado is still badass. I don't have a lot as much as I used to for Chris Taylor, just because, again, 3 seasons. 2017 for Chris Taylor should have carried over to 2018, 2019. There's no reason why he should have been batting anywhere near 236 or the Mendoza line or whatever. So Nolan Arenado, I know, is still badass. He's still being his awesome self at third base. I would just encourage him to improve his batting so that he gets some sort of batting title, whether it's home runs, RBIs, batting average, and that'll give him more credibility when his turn for the Hall of Fame comes in to play. But George Springer could have been the guy, but he's not the right African. So, okay. So back to this. So this is raw. This is me going through every player and saying, okay, when did they get voted in? I added their position just because I'm gonna need it later on. But right now it's not super, super important. What's more important to me, I do separate them. What did they play a position or did they play pitcher? Just because the statistics are so different, right? So I need to attempt to organize it in a readable manner for myself and for everybody else. That's why you'll always see me separate. I did it in my cross-check test, so I have to separate the pictures, because otherwise all these numbers just do not make sense. And then I didn't do it here, but you see, this is my attempt to say, okay, these are your pitchers. That's why they have wins and ERA titles as opposed to your position players, whom are batting average, home run, RBI. And then I added stolen bases because white guys stole bases too. And Ty Cobb and Honus Wagner are in the top 20 of stolen bases. So today I just want to focus on some raw data. And then tomorrow I will dig into the cross-check test. I'm not sure how long that's going to take. It just depends on how much insight I want to give. But so you see, I mean, once you get out of the first class, like, there are not a lot of first ballot guys, right? You've got second, third, fourth, fifth, eighth, seventh, third. And then you get into the weird ones. I understand the weird ones, but again, I think that was their attempt to get in American baseball players, given that integration was there. And then that's one of the reasons why I offer this cutoff right here, what was inducted before Jackie Robinson, to get an idea of the quality of the player that was being inducted at that time. And then you can see that I started, there's several columns that follow this, but it's just a lot of information, and it took me a long time because I'm attempting to not make errors on the numbers, and just get it all right. It's important to be accurate, right? And then also, are they a champion or not? So Tris Speaker, second ballot, he's a champion. Cap Anson, so, and that's what we run into, right? Sometimes it's difficult to judge these players because they played in an era when American baseball was still figuring it out. And I don't hold that against them, but I do celebrate them because they helped keep the sport alive. They helped keep it alive. There was always Americans willing to pick up the mantle. Is that the right way to say it? The torch. There were always Americans that were willing to pick up the torch. And so I was going to save some of this for Monday, but they played American baseball players like Ty Cobb, Cap Anson, Babe Ruth. It started around the Babe Ruth time. A lot of these guys played during a time when nobody in America was going around calling each other racist, because the term racism didn't exist on American soil. In addition, they played during a time when drugs weren't being synthesized on American soil, let alone shipped here. So a lot changed as of World War I. It was the Jewish population fleeing Germany from their own doing that brought the term racism with them. Racism denotes somebody, or specifically racism denotes someone from Germany who was a nationalist. Germans were living on their own soil, and they were being criticized by outsiders for being German nationalists. Yeah, nah, that's not gonna fly anymore. It's like Mexico. Oh, somehow it's wrong to be Mexican and to be a Mexican nationalist in Mexico. But we know that it's not the Mexican they're attacking per se. They're attacking our Spanish and French blood. They're trying to get us to go back to the times of uncivilization, which had its merits, but they were also sacrificing people for the gods, right? That's a little much, right? But they're not attacking the Mexican per se. They're attacking the Spanish, French blood side of us because it's European. We can't go backwards in America or Mexico. We can't go backwards. We can celebrate in Mexico. We can celebrate the Aztec heritage, but let's not go back to sacrificing people to the gods and eating organs and eating hearts and stuff like that. Let's not do that. Let's raise our IQ levels in America and Mexico as opposed to lowering it. So again, I do want to start tying things together. So again, this is raw data that I worked with, and I used it. I needed this component for the cross-check test to put all of that together. I went through several separate elements to reach a point where I said to myself, yeah, these analytics stuff, it's just like mediocrity, and no, it's not going to work anymore. Obviously, if they continue voting into the mediocrity into the hall, given that they know people are criticizing their choices now, it's different. It tells us that they don't give a flying duck, right? They don't give a flying duck about continuing to vote in mediocrity and out. I mean, again, this is an important ballot because we're going to find out whether or not they're going to vote in known steroid users. Known. It's not a secret. Barry Bonds used steroids. Barry Bonds used steroids in San Francisco. I remember Barry Bonds when he played for Pittsburgh. That was a scrawny dude in the outfield. And he was, we all have our personalities, and I'm not criticizing Barry Bonds for coming off as a prick. That's his personality, his chip on his shoulder. He's got to live with himself, right? He's got to live with himself. We, as a Dodger fan at that time, we only had to watch him play a couple times a year. And at that time, I don't believe that all the games were televised. Again, I grew up in the era where we still had KCOP and we had KTLA, and those are the two channels in LA that were televising games. One of them always televised on Sunday, and then others televised. I guess it depended on who they were playing against. Yeah, they usually televised the Atlanta games. They usually have televised the Atlanta games, and I just remember Vince Scully talking about the three pitchers of Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz, and he would say, he would lament with the rest of us, like, this was not going to, whenever those guys pitched, it was not going to be an easy series. When their other pitchers pitched, there was a different story. But again, that's the Stan Kasten model, right? With the when with the Dodgers, it was just two. It was Clayton Kershaw and Zach Greinke, and then good luck with the rest of the rotation. The Stan Kasten model, 3 pitchers, good luck with the rest, but that's why they only won 1 World Series. And I'm going to end up arguing that he was never attempting to win more than 1 World Series. He only won it in 1995 when it was not as short of a season as 2020 was, but nonetheless, it wasn't a full season, and that's the one that he won. That's why I was like, great, they're going to win 2020. That's Stan Kasten's cup of tea. Win the asterisk ones, right? I guess. I don't know what the logic is behind that, but Stan Kasten is a lifelong professional sports bureaucrat. He has more TV deals than championships. And you guys on the Atlanta side from that era, you're just going to have to deal with it, but I am going to dissect that era. You don't have to like it, but I get to have my opinion. I get to make my own conclusions. I get to observe and I get to judge. So it's not a personal attack on you, but it's dissecting what that was, and how coincidentally it's exactly what's happening with the Dodgers organization. And it's the common factor is Stan Kasten. And so I get to observe, I get to judge, I get to reach a conclusion, and I get to have my opinion. I'm not coming at this from an emotional standpoint. I believe I've kept my emotions in check. I criticize, I'm not going to criticize Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is the greatest American athlete. He saved baseball. He built Yankee Stadium, or the old one. He put the New York Yankees on the map. Thanks to Babe Ruth, there's a Derek Jeter. So I'm not going to criticize Babe Ruth. That's why it's so difficult for me to criticize Tom Brady, the greatest NFL player ever. But I'm not criticizing Tom Brady, the NFL player. I just wish that he wasn't a Marxist in his personal life. It's a little bit different. I don't have a leg to stand on to criticize Tom Brady, the NFL player. The NFL is not my thing. I'm not going to criticize Babe Ruth. I'm not going to criticize Ty Cobb. Christy Mathewson, a little bit, just because he was the most intellectual of the bunch. He had the shortest career, so it's a little bit different, although I still hold him in high regard. I'm not going to criticize Cap Anson, Spalding. So there are some that I will not criticize. I will make observations, but I'm not going to criticize them. Everybody else is kind of fair game. I don't feel like I can criticize Madison Bumgarner. I don't feel like I can criticize Zach Greinke nor David John LeMahieu, Randy Johnson, Curt Schilling. Pete Rose, I'm not sure. Nonetheless, he's one of American baseball's greatest hitters. Shoeless Joe Jackson, I just don't know enough of him to make a decision or reach a conclusion in any direction. I just know that there's been an attempt to give him an opportunity to enter the Hall, like Pete Rose, and it's been denied by a man from a different culture. So, I believe I've kept my emotions in check throughout this process. Do I act like a fan sometimes? Maybe. I think it would have been amazing for some of these men to have played together, like Cy Young. I just think it would have been amazing. But we don't get that. We didn't get that. So again, this is raw data that I used to build my cross-check test. That was the last step. I did a lot of research. I looked at a lot of things. I was trying to answer for myself, okay, what made that first class so great? And I mean, when you put it all together, it's pretty obvious, right? Like, I mean, come on. With the exception of Ty Cobb, who didn't become a champion. This is what greatness looks like in American baseball. So, let's see. Let me give you another view of this. So, I kind of regret calling Johnny Bench the second greatest catcher right now. It's almost like you do have to give them that status after they've died, because I'm going to annihilate one of the narratives that's going on right now in November. I'm going to wait for the season to be over. Let the narratives unfold to the fullest. Let them engineer. Right now I'm regretting the greatest catcher is obviously Yogi Berra, right? Everybody else, second place. I'm totally regretting that. But this is me putting everything together. I asked myself, okay, Yogi Berra, no batting titles, any batting titles to speak of, but the man managed to garner 10 championships. 10 championships as the backstop. As one very important half of the battery, right? As a New York Yankee, as not the tallest guy on the field, but definitely he knew what he was doing back there. How much help he was receiving from the manager, I don't know, but I imagine Yogi Berra knew how to manage games, right? 2,120 games. I imagine he knew what he was doing. Much like, I can't put Mike Scioscia on Yogi Berra, the Yogi Berra level, but I think Scioscia knew what he was doing back there as one half of the battery. I feel like AJ Ellis managed games very well too. So I think winning is far more important. So you guys kind of have to pick. I mean, which is it? Is MLB a team sport, or is it an individual sport? Okay. The other thing is you need to decide if individual accomplishments matter or not. Because I continue to contend that Derek Jeter is definitely not a first ballot Hall of Famer. If anything, he was a 10th ballot. His advocates argued that, individual accomplishments, not so great. Well, yeah, obviously they argue that because Derek Jeter was never the best at anything. Now, what's happening in Kansas, obviously that's because Kansas sucks. They're not in contention. So everybody can basically free swing away, right? Doesn't matter if they strike out, they're not in the postseason. So that's where this compiling comes from, right? Were the Texas Rangers competitive during the Alex Rodriguez years when he was using steroids? I'm going to guess that they were not. So I'm going to bring this in tomorrow. So you notice, or you should notice, that I don't give a rat's ass about MLB Marxist voted awards. First of all, they were still trying to figure it out during the Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth era. But what matters more is, like, when Christy Mathewson garnered one of his Triple Crowns, that was a year that the New York Giants garnered their championship. So it's always nice to have the best player on your team, but if that player isn't carrying the team, then I don't think he's the best player. And I mean, here you see Walter Johnson. I can't remember the quote, but they said something like, the best pitcher on the worst team. Well, okay, but they did manage a World Series championship. And I have to check to see how close they got to more. That's something that I am updating on some of my charts. How did the team do, right? That matters. How did the team do? Okay, so which is it? Is MLB a team sport or not? And do individual accolades matter or not? And I'm not including the media voted awards. I mean, Arenado, we know he's a Gold Glover. Like, we know this. You watch him play, we know he is a Gold Glover. Forever. Like, forever. So something that I'll do this tomorrow, and I'm going to have to display the raw data as opposed to me having worked with it, because I haven't up to this point. But let's look at the MVPs. And let's figure out how many of those MVPs were on teams that were competitive the year that they garnered their award. Let's do that. And I can do the same for the Cy Young Award. I don't want to touch the Cy Young Award too much because the way they've renamed other awards, I don't want to give MLB any fuel to rename the Cy Young Award. So I don't want to pour any gasoline on that right now. So I'm going to stay away from the Cy Young. But we know, right? I mean, Jacob deGrom apparently, right? With all those injuries, how many complete games does he have? How many shutouts does he have? But so I don't want to pour any gasoline in that direction right now. I don't want them to rename the award to some, come on, mediocre pitcher, right? Or some compiler. And I have to use that vocabulary because that's what it is. They're compilers, they're mediocre, they're your favorites. So, it is what it is. So today I talked about the raw data, an insight to some of the research that I did, figuring out, taking a look at all the Hall of Famers before 2019. And how did they get in? What ballot they got in on? Were they a champion or not? And then you can see on the side that I started to add. I did add. I just have to. It's a lot of numbers to work with, trying to make them readable. What years they played, how many titles, obviously if they won a championship, how many. And then I looked at the basic statistics of if they're a position player, batting average, RBIs, hits, home runs. I added stolen bases. And then for pitchers, games started, ERA, strikeouts for both. complete games and shutouts. So it's a lot of data. I mean, you guys know this. I mean, anybody who's attempted to research this stuff, you know how much data there is. And I'm not trying to make any enemies. But we've got to talk about some of this stuff. We've got to bring the past to the present. We've got to talk about this stuff, okay? So I'm not trying to make any enemies, but we've got to talk about this. Somebody had to slow your roll. Nobody else was doing it. Okay, so tomorrow we dive into the cross-check test, and I'm going to bring in the MVPs into this. Even here you see that I did not take into consideration media voted awards. It's production. What did they do? What did they do? I know there's some controversy right now about the Triple Crown and the MVP. I mean, I don't know. I don't have an opinion on it right now. I'd rather watch to see how the season unfolds and then talk about it in November. Just, when do you guys vote on these awards? I didn't realize that I would be giving you guys information for that. Or I forgot that you guys vote on these awards. Is that November? Okay. Well, we'll see. I'll figure it out when that schedule comes out. But tomorrow I'll be talking about the cross-check test. And then let's look at MVPs. Let's look at what the media has done. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. What else? Nothing specifically wowing to finish today with. But I do hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. If you made it this far, thank you. Today is that still on? Today's Thursday. Is that discussion between Scott Greer and Ramsey Paul still on today? What I'm going to do is just check out both of their Twitter accounts, whomever posts the link to the discussion. I'm just going to follow the link. Ramsey Paul, Scott Greer are going to have a discussion on what's happening in America in 2021, given the obvious attempt to replace birthright Americans. Just let's see if they bring anything about the economy into it. Let's see if they bring anything. What do I want to hear them talk about? I just want to hear their take on everything. These are two intelligent men, American men. I just personally want to hear their take on everything. Mexico isn't being allowed to secure their border either, right? So there's a lot to look into this. I'm curious about the economy. We've got to help Americans become self-sufficient again. They did it in the early 1900s. They did it for almost 300 years. There are ways to help Americans become self-sufficient again. Every time we face a barrier, we have to figure out how to go around it. Let's put it this way. So I had to renew a bunch of stuff, and when I speak with customer service representatives, that's a great time when I gain insight into stuff that's happening. So even email is being impacted. I can tell you an experience that I had similar to my email experience recently. So several years ago, I had an independent internet service provider, and it was outstanding. It wasn't connected to my address, so I could receive the service. I guess it was through satellite or something. And I had that service for several years, and I was very, very, very happy with it. I never had problems. I never had internet issues. It was an outstanding service. And then they got bought out. And I was like, great, now what? And when they got bought out is when I had to get cable. First of all, at that time, we were in an area where you couldn't get television. It's not like other areas where you get a lot of channels with just the antenna. It is insane. Northern California, like I first experienced that in San Francisco. They told me, they're like, if you want television, you have to get cable, because they knew I was from Southern California. And so they gave me a lot of information. And so that's, Northern California is different than Southern California. And I had cable for a while. And then after that, we didn't have cable for a long time. And once my internet provider, my independent internet provider, got bought out by a corporation, I had to make a choice. I was like, all right, let's just do the bundle. And that's when I acquired cable service. And so the independent service providers are constantly being bought out. It's like real estate investors and single family homes. Real estate investors there are some meaner than evil ones out there purposely driving up taxes. They're pricing you out of the market. So we've got to get out of this. We've got to get out of the dependency. We've got to we're so dependent on a few service providers for internet, email, cable, housing, food, clothing, whatever, right? I'm going to admit, I'm not anti-Walmart. I have to admit, the freshest fruit we get it at Walmart. Oh, I know it's like sacrilege, right? But we get it at Walmart. So do what you will with that, but I don't do farmers markets. I have not had wonderful experiences with them. The best fruit quality comes from either a grocery store or Walmart. I know. Sorry. But that's another opportunity, right? We've got to figure out how to not be dependent on corporations for these kinds of things. We've got to figure out how to break away from it. And I don't think it's complicated. And then every time you come into an obstruction in the road, that's when you say, we need a couple of you guys to figure this out, and this is your career going forward. This is your job. This is your contribution, right? There's tons of opportunity for American engineers. You can make good money off of that. good money off of that. So that's how I'm going to end today's stream. Not bad, right? So from my understanding, tonight is the discussion between Ramsey Paul and Scott Greer, both intelligent, well-spoken men, on the Killstream site, whatever platform that they use. Personally, I'm just going to head over to both accounts. Whomever has the link up, I'm going to click on the link and find the stream that way if it's still happening today. All right, you guys. So definitely have a good Thursday. I will see you back here tomorrow as close to 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time as possible. If you made it this far, thank you again. See you tomorrow.